Coming to you live from Atlanta, Georgia, it's time for another episode of Tech Talk with your host, Joey Kline.
Welcome to another Tech Talk. I think that this is actually the first one that we have done all summer. We've been a little bit dormant. So thanks everyone for tuning in. We've got a really great conversation that is going to focus on the healthcare world today. Local Atlanta early stage company NPHub, CEO and founder Krish Chopra. How are you doing, Krish?
I'm doing well, man. Thank you so much for having me here today.
Yeah, absolutely. Looking forward to chat about this. So before we started rolling here, you mentioned that you were from New York, and I always like to understand how people get to where they got to. So give me the story of New York to Atlanta and whatever was in between, if anything.
So the story I always tell is I was born and raised in New York City, right? Born and raised Queens, Brooklyn, been tons of times just exploring and loving New York. When I went to undergrad, I applied to Michigan, got in, one of the better schools I got into, and so I wanted to go. And after Michigan, I had a decision to make of where do you go, where am I going to sort of put down roots? And you know how a lot of people in college, they sort of think of, I'm going to go kind of start my life and become who I want to be in New York or LA or the Bay. The issue was I'm from New York. And so I didn't have that luxury, right? You go back and you have a family, you have friends pressure, and for me to get the chance to restart, I was in Atlanta for a training program right out of undergrad for 6 months. Liked the city enough. And what I loved about it was also the cost of living. And so when I was in New York working for a couple of years, I moved back to Atlanta to start my company because my burn would last longer.
Yeah.
Like I only had a certain amount of money saved up. And I needed to figure it out. And so in New York, that might have lasted 3-4 months. But in Atlanta, it lasted 6-7. And so that was critical,
So did you go straight from undergrad to entrepreneur?
No.
Okay.
No. I always refer to myself as sort of like a, what's the word I'm looking for? Like a converted entrepreneur. There's some people that are born and bred, and that's kind of, they never had a job. They had a, newspaper selling business as a kid. That was not me.
Yeah.
I was in corporate sales out of undergrad for 2 years, and from 22 to 24, sounds about right, and moved down at that point to start my company. And the main reason why was in corporate America, I was very much a cog in a wheel, and what, in the nicest way possible, what I didn't make a difference every day.
Sure.
So if I didn't show up, it didn't matter. And so nothing hurt more, like, psychologically speaking, of like, I was, as a seller, I was ranked 17th out of 1,000 sellers.
Yeah.
When I left my last 6 months in.
Not bad.
And no one had asked me to stay. They didn't backfill the role. And so if you're a good seller and they're not doing that, then you really have to think about what's the whole point of this. And so starting a company was really just a matter of finding a place to fit in.
Yeah, I hear that. And I think your point is have you heard the saying, like, there are two kinds of people in this world, people who think there are two kinds of people in this world, and everyone else. To some degree, that is true. But when it comes to entrepreneurs, I really do think that they typically fall into two buckets. One are those that could never take orders, needed autonomy, couldn't deal with authority from day one. Right. And they had the paper route, whatever it was. And it was just a foregone conclusion that I can never work for the man, quote unquote. And then there are others that come to it almost because they have to. Either they have to because they just find the corporate world insufferable. They have to because they have an idea and they can't shake it, whatever it is. And there's nothing wrong with either one of those, right? Most people get to the same place. You sound very much like you were in the second bucket.
100%. Because I didn't fit into corporate America. The way I talk, the way I communicate, I'm very much, let's get it done. We don't have to say it the best way possible. We don't have to politic this. We just need to, what's the actual answer? What's the best thing to move forward here? And I felt like I had a ceiling in corporate America. Like I would get a promote, maybe. And I would cap out there because I didn't play the game. I didn't know how to play the game. And even now, that's not part of my repertoire, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Well, and do you ever wonder, and I want to ask this question and then just double back to what NPHub does, because anyone listening, I want them to just know right off the bat. But okay, you're growing your company, right? And right now you are very far from being a large, stodgy corporate institution. Okay. But I imagine that you have high goals for your organization. Okay. You want to grow it, I'm sure, as big as it can get, right? So do you ever get look, sometimes as the organization grows, the founder's vision and the founder's personality gets stamped out a little bit. And so I'm curious, do you ever wonder to yourself, like, okay, if I make this thing as big as I think it should be, is it going to turn into something that I don't want it to?
Yeah, you're hitting the nail on the head. I think about that all the time, especially recently. So we just completed our Series A investment, and I was ready for what that entailed. But I think once you receive it and then you really understand, hey, these are the growth objectives. This is the investors behind you. And this is a company that they can't, it's a minority round. And so I'm still the majority owner. It's still a matter of managing on what good looks like from their sort of playbook and their sort of concepts here. I think about it nonstop lately. And I think the only answer, it's a work in progress. The biggest answer I have is making sure you spot correct the behaviors you don't want. Like, you might have friction between the business unit and product, and that shouldn't exist at this level. Like, you kind of intuitively know it, and I feel it. And so you have to nip that you have to nip in the butt.
Yeah.
You have to continue to make sure that the people managing the people now, they're the ones that get the culture you want.
Sure.
And so it's your executive team, it's your senior leadership team, and it's your management team as well, like the managers in the org. So if they follow it, that's the best way to make sure that the new person being hired, who I might not have a lot of face time with, they know from osmosis. And even though it gets diluted down, it's never going to be perfect. Instead of it being like 10% of what you want, it's maybe closer to 60, 70, 80. And you can live with that.
Yeah. Look, there's only so much that you can do because you'll drive yourself nuts with everything else that you have to do, of course.
That's true. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Let's get back to value proposition, mission, product. Let's put it out there. What y'all do? What problem y'all are trying to solve?
So NPHub, we're trying to save healthcare in the U.S. We all know healthcare is broken. We all know that. We go to we have to wait months to go get an appointment. We don't have price transparency, and in a lot of ways, you can't even get in front of providers in many cases, many parts of the country. And so that we're solving for that by enabling nurse practitioners, this incredible sort of provider group that's spun up over since the last 60, 70 years. It's grown in droves. So the fast growing profession in the US. They lack resources. They lack support. And we're trying to solve for that. And we're doing that by providing them clinical placements. So that way they can graduate and become great providers. So they get great education. And then we're helping them get their first and second, third, fourth jobs. And so it's all about alignment, where you're creating this transparency between the candidates, these graduates, these nurse practitioners in market, and employers who want to connect with them. They want to hire the right people. And so how do you put them together in a way where there's less noise in the system and you're hiring better fits on both sides? Like you're finding a better job if you're a candidate, and you're finding a better employee if you're an employer. And so that you have longevity. And that's what we're solving for.
Okay, so I can almost imagine you in a pitch starting out saying we're going to save healthcare, which is obviously an extremely lofty, ambitious statement that gets someone's attention. So look, I think anyone listening, even if they don't know the ins and outs, that we're spending 17% plus of our GDP on healthcare right now, could say just from an anecdotal experience, yes. Healthcare as is generally benefits the top 10% of the income ladder. And for everyone below that, leaves quite a bit to be desired. And even for the top 10, right, a bit to be desired. So why does the focus on the nurse practitioner save healthcare?
So when you think about healthcare, think about the entry point of healthcare. We're seeing primary care physicians, and there's simply not enough of them. And so for the multitude of reasons of why that is the case, I think it's 2035 or 2037, there's going to be a shortage of 160,000 primary care physicians. And so how's the United States filling this void? Well, they're filling this void with this new type of provider in market, which are nurse practitioners and physician assistants. And I don't mean to say that they're a new type of provider, but relative to what a physician and the history of what physicians are, going back hundreds of years. And so you have these new providers, and they're really becoming the entry point, and even in many cases, specialization, the entry point of healthcare. And when we're talking about how do we get appointments faster, how do we not wait 3 months? How do we see a provider for more than 5 minutes and not feel like we are, we all know that feeling. Of going
Sure,
for
where
a run.
you're just a number.
You're a number. They're in, you're out. You didn't catch their name. They didn't ask you the second question. They said, "What are you feeling today?" Okay, got it. Here's your medicine. You're out. That's not healthcare. It's a transaction.
Mm-hmm.
And I think nurse practitioners, physician assistants, they fit this model in there where they're actually caring for their patients. And that's what we need, I think, in the U.S.
Okay, so you're saying because we are going to have a shortage of primary care internist, another just synonym for those out there, that nurse practitioners, PAs, lower barrier to actually become one.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, just from a number of years that it takes to actually get into it, cost, years. The medical school gauntlet is not a cheap or easy one, or for the faint of heart.
Correct.
So I'm putting words in your mouth, and you're going to tell me if I'm correct or not. Basically, you have another form of practitioner, provider that maybe doesn't fill all healthcare needs, but gets us 50, 60% of the way there of what an internist, primary care physician would do. And if we're better able to get those folks trained, staffed, and distributed, that then helps stem the problem of not enough internists in the market.
Exactly. Accessibility is the number one concept we're trying to solve for. Because once you solve accessibility, then you can move into every other topic, right? So 100% exactly what you said. I have this belief that healthcare should be run where your entry point, right? Like if I'm sick or you're sick and your child is sick and you have to go to urgent care and you have the flu, you have a cold, you don't need to necessarily see someone with 8 years of postgraduate experience. It's okay to see a nurse practitioner, a physician assistant, and in certain cases, it gets escalated up where the physician, in my mind, becomes this floor general.
Sure.
And they're available as needed. And now you're prioritizing the time for the physician to see complex cases that might be out of scope for the nurse practitioner or PA. But I'll tell you, from everything I've seen over the last 7 years of building this company, many, especially primary care providers, especially psych mental health providers, the fastest growing profession for healthcare, for inside healthcare right now, they're able to accomplish 60, 70, 80%. And in most cases, that's good for us, the patients.
Yeah. It almost feels like, this is what, granted, it's a much smaller band of the human body of healthcare, but it's almost like going to the dentist, right? I mean, like you primarily see the dentist at the end of your appointment, or if something is really, really complex and, the frontline assistant cannot take care of it. But much of their time is spent strategically on more complex issues than the traditional work of dentistry.
I think it's a very fair analogy. There.
Sure, there might be some, crudeness around the edges there, but that was what came to mind initially.
I think it makes sense, right? When we go to a physician, we're going to a practice. The first person you see is usually the MA, who's kind of doing some of the basics, right? Taking your charting, maybe capturing your blood pressure. That absolutely still should be done. And again, this is about best use of time, most efficient use of time. And for whatever reason it is, there just aren't enough residency slots for physicians.
Yep.
And so until that fixes, we, us as patients, us in the US, we can't wait for that to occur.
That's right.
Right. We were talking about this before the podcast started. There's politics involved with that. There is regulations, nuance. It's politicized. That is not the game we're in. We're in the game of, this is the problem. We're trying to solve the problem of accessibility.
Yeah. People's health cannot wait for the government to, get out of its own way.
That is the best statement so far.
Yeah. Do you have a healthcare background?
I do not know.
Okay.
I'm not smart enough.
Yeah. Okay. So how did this come to you?
So my very first successful company I started, successful meaning that it didn't fall apart in 3 months.
Sure.
Was a similar business where we were working with medical schools, typically schools in the Caribbean, international medical schools. In the Caribbean, we were one of the first companies to go to the Philippines and source medical students there. And we brought them to the U.S. for clinical education so they could apply to residency in the U.S., or they could take that education and go back to their own countries and usually get better paying jobs, or more prestigious clinical placements.
Yep.
We did that for about 3 years, and in that time, we started having nurse practitioners reach out to us randomly. And my entire thesis was, there's no way U.S. educated nurse practitioners have this problem. It must be one off, two off. And so for a period of time, we didn't listen to them, and we didn't listen to the market, like any young entrepreneur always misses. And that was us. And so eventually, one student turned to 5, turned to 10, turned to 20, and then we realized this nurse practitioner gap is bigger. There were no other competitors in the field, meaning that if these students on my medical company, my first company, if these students didn't work with us, they had alternatives. There's 10 other companies like us. For these nurse practitioners, if these students didn't use us, they didn't graduate. And so you had the ability to have a larger impact. And then you had the second is there was no one else in the field, so we got to innovate.
Yeah.
And so we got to build a platform, build the technology to enable scale. And we would never have been able to do that in a proven sort of like third generation, older school dynamic in the medical space of what we were in.
Sure. It is the unintended consequence of being in business and learning something that you didn't set out to figure out.
100%.
So is your direct client the healthcare system, the practice? How does the product actually work?
So we have this overarching platform, and we have different products involved. And so on our first product, we work with students and we work with universities, and we have the network of clinical placements that these students or schools will come to us. We'll provide that for their students, or at the end of the day, we're helping the students graduate, whether we're through the university or the student directly. Now, that's product number one. And so in that model, your customers, it's a marketplace, right? So you ask Airbnb who their customer is, they're going to say both, right? Is it the host or the visitor? Well, you need both to survive.
Yes.
So in that model, the clinical sites, which are the clinics, the hospitals, those are they're part of our network. And then we have the universities and the students, and they're part of our sort of client base. On the hiring platform, similar model, we have candidates, and then we have employers. And so employers are the people we are, reaching out to and communicating that we have this platform that no one else in the country has. We have this data on quality control that no one else can provide. That's what we're doing there.
Okay. But okay, so yes, I understand you are a classic two-sided marketplace, but how do you actually get paid?
On product one that we mentioned, the marketplace, the clinical placement marketplace, it's students or universities.
Okay.
And on the hiring platform, it's employers.
Okay. That's what I figured, but wanted to clarify. Okay. All right. So you mentioned earlier that you just raised your Series A, obviously a really big milestone for any organization. What happens next? Is it about market reach? Is it about new products? All of the above? What's the plan?
It's really everything, right? You're sort of supposed to amplify every single thing you're doing.
Yeah.
I can tell you that to date, we've spent so much time getting our process on working with students directly down, and we are excellent at that. That is what got us to scale. And so the next phase of growth for us is now saying, hey, we've worked with these students and we've helped thousands of them. Closer to, I think, actually, we've just crossed the 11,000 milestone in terms of students. Now the next play for us is to really move and speak more with universities, speak more with these employers, focus on this B2B segment of this, because most people, university students, would agree that we all believe it should be accountable to the university on providing clinical placements. And we're seeing some of that legislation, some of that market, the sentiment change now around that, where schools want to provide this. It's a differentiating concept for them. Right? Some schools don't provide it. Some schools do provide it. The schools that do provide it often see a higher tier. And then the second part of it is quality control. Where when we're graduating, we have 400,000 nurse practitioners right now in school at any given time. There's about 120,000. There's 40,000 graduates every single year. These 40,000, quality control now becomes a major concern for many of these programs, because these students want to be successful and these universities want these students to be of high quality.
Okay. You're a sales guy. I'm a sales guy. I'm always curious in the sales process of how you actually get this out there. Is this an inside sale, outside sale kind of model? Is it all, internet marketing? I mean, are you hiring a bunch of salespeople to go and make the enterprise sale, or are you able to pretty easily convert, marketing leads into sales without the help of a large team?
So we have a sales team in place.
Okay.
And so we have two different types. Internally, we refer to it as the B2C function and the B2B function. So the B2C, which is working with the students directly, we have an internal sales team in place there, and they are phenomenal at what they do, which is getting to the student, solving their anxiety, solving their concerns, and asking them the appropriate questions to direct them to the best placement possible. And we have AI supporting that effort as well. On the B2B function that's scaling up currently, you're exactly right. We're hiring sales reps. A lot of this can be done inside, but it's less inside-outside sales. It's more of enterprise sales.
Sure.
And so in many cases, it's Zoom, but if you need to be on site, then we'll get our butts on site.
Yeah, it depends how big the deal is, depends how complex the organization is.
Exactly. And it depends on what is expected of us from that particular client.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I hear that. So, and I imagine that you're so right now, are you national?
Yes, we operate, I believe, in 46 of the 50 states.
Okay.
There's a few we're just not in. Hawaii, Alaska.
Still, pretty good count.
Mm-hmm.
And what was had you ever done a large fundraising round for any of your previous organizations?
I have not. This was the first.
Okay, so I'm curious to hear about what that was like, along with that small job of actually running the company. You're choosing your words carefully.
Brutal was the answer. Oh. So we started the fundraising officially in September of last year.
Okay.
There's a lot of stages to a fundraising process. And I think a lot of folks focus a lot on getting the term sheet, right? Which is essentially less of the signal of, hey, we want to partner with you, and more of a signal of, we don't want to get rid of you yet. If that makes sense, right? And sort of it's an early step into the investor dynamic, in the investor relationship. And so the first part of this was getting better at, how do you secure the term sheet? How are you saying the right things and getting the investors interested and communicating your value proposition effectively? That took time. And so we were under a term with a growth equity company at the start of this year. We were expecting to close in January, and towards the end of this, the deal started to fall apart.
Yeah.
And that happens in occasion.
Sure.
And so end of January, the deal started to fall apart. And so we went back to market in February. I'm a big fan of, you get hit in the face. You don't, go wallow for a month. You go back out there and pick yourself back up. And so confident, luckily we were able to secure 2 additional term sheets by the end of March. And so we had a good turnaround time. And so in those 2 term sheets, then we also hired a banker to support us in this effort. Mm-hmm. And that's one of the biggest things I can tell any entrepreneur who is raising their Series A, if you should be working with a banker, because they are the only representative on your side that really helps you filter and helps you navigate the dynamic with the investor. And so the investors, they are cutting deals on a 24/7 basis. They are excellent at cutting a deal.
Yep.
Entrepreneurs are excellent at running a business. There's a gap there. And a lot of entrepreneurs think they should just go do it themselves. And even many VCs and private equity will tell you, oh, no, you guys can handle it yourself, or you're fine. But it's because it's asymmetric information.
Of course.
And so that was a big difference on the second time around. In addition to that, our business was in a really good place. We were continuing our growth trajectory. Everything was working well, and nothing creates more confidence in a fundraising process when you are hitting your numbers during fundraising.
You are the first person to ever come on here and talk about hiring a banker.
I know this is get in trouble.
No, not at all. I find it interesting because look, intermediaries, middlemen. Obviously, that's not I'm an intermediary. I'm a middleman. Okay. Many of us exist for a reason, to enable a transaction, to know both sides. And what you're saying makes a lot of sense. I have just never had anyone come on and actually talk about that part of it. A lot of people talk about, and this was maybe a little bit more, kind of 5 to 10 years ago, but how hard it is to raise money in Atlanta. That's changed. It's still not amazing, but it's changed for sure. But yeah, a lot of it focused on having to go to the Northeast and the West Coast, as opposed to the actual mechanics of doing it and the help. It was just interesting,
I will tell you that we and I got a lot more success with investors from the Northeast.
Yeah.
And I think Atlanta has an emerging scene, emerging tech scene. So you have, a couple of great conferences. Venture Atlanta, we were a presenter at Venture Atlanta a couple years ago, really helped us along, get out there more. But fundamentally, in Atlanta, you have more private equity than you do venture.
Sure.
And so you do have this problem of people not investing at your stage of Series A. And you find that more in the Northeast, in the West Coast. And we certainly did. And we eventually partnered up with Edison Partners. They're Nashville-based.
Yeah.
But funny enough, the lead investor with us, one of the partners there, we had great rapport, but she was from Boston.
Yeah. I wonder if part of it is interesting because we have an amazing talent scene. Okay.
100%.
Right. But the level of talent we have, the fundraising, or at least the breadth of fundraising opportunities available and different stages available has not caught up with, I think, where we are from a talent stage. And I'm wondering if part of this has to do with the fact that a lot of the people who have made a massive amount of money that can either, that can be an LP or they can start a fund themselves. There are starting to be more of them who made it in technology in Atlanta, but a lot of them did not make their money in technology.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of them made their money in real estate or C-suite gigs at, large Fortune 500s.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just a very, very different type of investor. I just don't think that mindset is not there among those who have the funds to kickstart something like that.
So I agree with you 100%. These fundraising rounds develop in reverse, right? Which is kind of weird. You would think that you would have organizations funding a Series C and D because those are much lower risk, but it's not actually how it works. What ends up happening is you have, folks that might have worked at like Calendly, at Snap, at Snap Nurse, I mean.
Yeah.
And other bigger companies that made it from the tech scene in the Southeast, they do well and they start angel investing. And you have a fantastic angel investing scene in Atlanta.
Totally.
Fantastic.
Right? It's like if you're under $1 million or like $1 million to $3 million,
you have access because you have Rise out of the Emory out of Emory's B School over there. You have the Tech Village. You have
the Overline guys.
You have ATTC. You have so many opportunities there
for sure.
Tech Square Ventures, I think, as well. Anywho, and so as you kind of go up in rounds, you go to your Series A, Series B, etc., that pool gets smaller.
Yeah.
And because you have a lot of, I can't tell you if this is the exact reason. I can tell you my inclination on why it occurs is you have less risk appetite in Atlanta. And because you have less risk appetite, you have depressed valuations.
I agree.
So we got term sheets and we got interest from Atlanta-based investors. They were just not understanding the vision of what we want to build here. And they're seeing us as point A to point B.
Mm-hmm.
And we're like, well, hold on. If we just do point B and C, we're going to continue to scale up.
Mm-hmm.
And that is where, for us at least, we didn't get traction or adaptability.
I hear that.
Yeah.
Did you wrestle with raising versus just funding from operations?
3 years. We didn't fundraise. We started officially. This company started in 2017.
Okay.
We raised in 2025. So for 7, I should know this, but let's call it 7 years.
Yeah.
Almost purely 7. I think we bootstrapped this thing from the very beginning.
But was it because you could, or because you were on principle dedicated to that, or both?
We did it because that's how we wanted to grow.
Okay.
I think there's two issues there, or two sort of subpoints there. Subpoint A is I wanted to be in control I think, from even the stories of just not fitting in, from my younger days, it was about being able to make the decisions we wanted to make, even if they were mistakes, even if it was prioritizing the wrong things.
Sure.
That was the call I wanted to make. Then the second call inside of that was, it took me a long time to realize we were onto something big. I would argue between 2017 and 2021, it was still this idea of like, maybe I'm going to be a lifestyle entrepreneur. Maybe it's going to cap out at growth. It was only until 2022 where we started to realize, and it was actually almost an inflection point of where we grew so much, we needed more experienced professionals. It couldn't just be these junior folks on our team that worked really hard. We needed to know what good looks like, myself included. And so I hired a seasoned operator that essentially fixed all the issues I created as we grew. Fast forward a little bit, then I hired a experienced CTO, and all of a sudden it's like, wait, with this team in place, sky's the limit. We can do anything we want. And those two folks were sort of like the catalyst for me to realize, all right, these guys are top tier and they're putting their time here. They're not doing that so we can have a fun game. They're doing that so we can do something amazing and build something memorable. And that was it.
Well, I think as the years have gone by, I have realized that all you are, and by extension, all your company is the sum of the quality of the people around you. And it goes for your friendships and your professional relationships. To that end, I would love to get your take on culture and leadership. One of the things that we talked about at the beginning is your fear of your company turning into something that you don't recognize or that you didn't want it to. And that part of the way you avoid that is, you hire the right people, you test them, they understand the mission. So, you're still at the point where I imagine that you are intimately involved with every hire that comes through your door. What do you look for? How do you make sure that a relative stranger, let's be honest, is going to be the right fit for your team?
So I am not involved in every hire any longer.
Okay.
We've gotten to the point now where I'm involved with many of the senior hires, so they're coming in at a management level or above.
Sure.
I will have some interaction, usually final round interview, something like that. The biggest thing is making sure we know why we're hiring. Are we hiring this person because the current person in the role isn't doing as well anymore? Are we hiring because the business needs it? Have we explored an alternative to hiring? Because when you add new headcount, it is great and awful at the same time. It's great because you're bringing someone new in, and every new hire brings in new energy to the company. And especially in that first month, I can visualize the moment for some of the best people we ever hired. And in the first month that this person is going to be great. Because no one ever starts off good and turns great. They start off great and they stay great, or they start off bad and they stay bad. That's generally a rule of thumb. And if they're in the middle, you are settling. And that is a rule of thumb. At least someone that I truly believe in. And so you train the methodology, and then you train the methodology to the management team on how to hire effectively. And we use something called the PRINT survey, which is a shortcut on understanding people's motivations. And so it's very similar to the Enneagram. It's sort of like the corporate version of that.
Yeah.
And so everyone's assigned these two numbers. And so I'll give you a quick example. If you're hiring a sales rep, you want them to be very numbers oriented, right? They want to hit a target. That is what a great sales rep looks and feels like. And so there's a PRINT associated with that. And that's referred to as it's a PRINT 3. And so a PRINT 3, you want that person, if they're in sales, to exhibit that behavior. That's their motivation, because that's how you're going to shortcut getting to know them. Because in a long enough horizon, you don't need a system to tell you how to get one of your team members motivated or how to push them forward.
Yeah.
But in the short time horizon, when you don't know them really well, having a framework really does help, and it helps you move faster. And I would argue, more importantly than getting every strategy right or being the best company, it's about moving quickly and iterating fast. That is maybe that's the wrong word. That is an underrated point of view, and it's an underrated statement. And I think that for us, we have taught our team this methodology on hiring. We've established what good hires sort of need to think and feel like. So if you're in a finance function, you probably want someone to be very detail oriented. You don't want them to be like me, who is not detail oriented. My finance person would tell you that I am the most unorganized person he's probably worked with. And Rogers, if he's listening to this, he will probably nod his head along to this right now because I'm not meant for that.
Yeah.
Right. I'm meant for the, let me go talk to a customer.
That's right.
That's what it is.
Yeah. From a sales perspective, and you just brought up talking to customer, right? Have you had problems letting go of the sales process?
I don't know. How honest do I be here?
Right. Or have you even been able to?
Yes.
Yeah.
So by trade, I'm a salesperson and marketer.
Yeah.
That's how I see myself. And, at some point I did.
That's typically what most founders are.
Started in sales, realized I can't do every single sale, switched over to marketing. So how do I do sales at scale? And then eventually now and don't do either as much as I'd like to and need to. So have I had trouble letting go? Yes, absolutely. 100%. On the sales side, I have let go of it 95% of it. At least that's what I believe is to be true. The remaining is really I get tied in on our messaging to our customers. Like anyone would tell you, there's always the right way of speaking to the customer, and it's in my head, unfortunately. And it's hard for me to say, hey, this is how you should do it. It's easy for me to say when I hear it, like that's not how you do it. If that makes sense.
Sure. This is like the Supreme Court on pornography. I know it when I see it.
Exactly. Yeah. And so, that's a great line. Oh, I need it. Thank you.
Steal shamelessly. It's yours.
Appreciate it.
Yeah.
So sales, I have let go quite a bit. Marketing in a work in progress right now. Yeah. We happen to have, we've developed an incredible sales manager at the organization, and this guy knows what to do. And so because we have great talent, I can let go more. We have a fantastic marketer on the team, someone I've known half my life. Because we have him, I can let him go. And so it's less about, for me, what I realized over time, it's less like I need to let go. It's I need to bring in the person I trust who knows it better than I do.
Sure. Right. Who's got the ability, wherewithal, and clout to be able to tell you, I got it, bro.
Yes. Yeah. And I tell the team all the time, if I'm too involved, like there's a saying, I actually stole this, I think, from Alex Hormozy. He says, use if useful. And so I'll send a message. Like I sent a message out to my CTO today.
Yeah.
And I'm like, hey, this is an opportunity for us to do A, B, and C. And I told him, like, look, hey, I'm nothing was wrong here. Just use if useful. And that is something I find myself doing a lot more of now, where I don't want to get too overly involved. Sure. Because just by virtue of me having a question about it, it creates stress in the organization.
Sure. You're the CEO. Yeah.
And that's hard to adjust to.
I get that. But I think being it's never fully going to go away, right? But being cognizant of it and being present and understanding, I don't know, probably half the battle. Hopefully.
I hope so. We'll find out in a couple of years. The scoreboard, unfortunately for us, runs in it is a lagging indicator.
Yeah.
And so we'll see how this plays out.
I'd love to learn more about your experience with Venture Atlanta, because that is, again, we criticized, or at least commented openly and bluntly on the fundraising scene in Atlanta. Mm-hmm. Venture Atlanta seems like it has just been an unmatched success in a city of ours that, punches above its weight class in talent, probably punches below its weight class in access to funding. And so I'd be curious, tell me about how you got involved, what you think of it, what it's meant to the company.
So it's funny you're saying this, because I actually recently wrote an article for them, kind of post the Series A, because I wanted to give them I wanted people to see the success story of a normal Series A company.
Yeah.
I'm not of the opinion we're doing anything super special. We have a great business. We have great people on our team. We're doing something very cool, but we are one of thousands of companies doing this every day right now, right? These startup companies that are gaining scale. And so Venture Atlanta meant a lot to us, because I was very I don't want to say invisible. I felt the company and I were invisible to the investment market. A, because we haven't raised, so people didn't know about us. And then B, we're in this weird niche, which is, are we in healthcare? Are we in ed tech? Are we in healthcare tech? Okay. Wait, nurse practitioners, what do they do? I went to a room of investors in Atlanta. You had 20 partners of different firms, maybe it's 15. And I went up in this kind of front of this room, and I asked everyone, like, hey, so who here knows what a nurse practitioner does? 2 out of 15 or 18 people raise their hand. That is what you have here. Now, I have asked that same question to a group in Chicago. And guess what? 15 out of 15 raised their hand. And so then that was a frustrating experience for me. And so Venture Atlanta helped us get out to market and share the story of what we're doing. It also, because we were selected as a presenter, that obviously helps the most as a growth stage company.
Yeah.
And so being a presenter there, they help coach you on how to pitch in this 3-minute format, which is an incredibly short format, but you do figure out how to distill down your ideas quickly. And so that was very helpful.
Save healthcare. What else is there?
Save healthcare. This is how we're doing it.
Yeah.
This is why it matters. These are what nurse practitioners are.
Okay, I'm going to be vulnerable here and hopefully answer the question for some listening. Can you describe the difference between a nurse practitioner and a physician's assistant specifically?
I can do my best.
Okay.
So nurse practitioner, physician assistants overlap in a lot of ways. And many times when employers are hiring, they'll hire an NP or a PA interchangeably. Nurse practitioners are advanced practice nurses. So they're nurses, usually have worked for a couple of years. Think of like the MBA type of format, right?
Okay.
They've worked, and they go back to school. They're going back to school while they're working full time.
Okay, so nurse is different from nurse practitioner.
Yeah.
The practitioner is, again, the MBA of the traditional
It is
BA.
the graduate advanced practice version of the nurse. And so the nurse, we've all heard the horror stories. Nurses are working in the hospital, especially during COVID. They hated working there. They went back to school in droves. They go back to school for 2 years, usually 3 years sometimes, and they become a nurse practitioner. Nurses, on average, they are generally the providers of care, but they are not providing the instruction of care. They're receiving that instruction. They are providing it. Nurse practitioners are giving the orders.
I see. Okay.
Very similar to the physician model there. The difference is nurses are trained in the nursing methodology. Physician assistants are trained in the physician methodology. And that is just a different way it is like 2 ways of skinning a cat. Is that the saying? 2 ways of skinning a cat?
Yeah. I mean, that's the saying. I don't really understand where skinning a cat came from, but yes, that is the idiom.
That's crude if you think about it.
Yeah.
But there's multiple ways to get to the same end goal, right?
Sure.
And then there's a nursing model and there's a healthcare model. I would be remiss. I would be inaccurate if I'm telling you exactly what the difference is there.
But that's helpful.
At a high level, I believe nurse practitioners come from a more empathetic approach. They come with they need more time with the patient. They like to educate and bring the patient along. Physician assistants are more on the medical model.
I think what was the most helpful, at least for me, there was the differentiation between the nurse and the nurse practitioner. One is essentially the follower of orders. The other is the more highly educated, more specialized giver of orders.
Correct. And you have the same specialization with nurse practitioners that any other provider has, right? So you have psych mental health nurse practitioners.
Yeah.
You have family nurse practitioners. You have acute care nurse practitioners. You have, down the gamut, women's health nurse practitioners, pediatric nurse practitioners, similarly styled. And so you have all of that specialization that occurs. It's just occurring under the nursing model of education.
Okay, obviously you are extraordinarily entrenched in the healthcare world right now. Okay. And part of that, I imagine, is because you have a passion for it. Part of it is because you have happened upon this product that is being well received in that world. Do you think that you will, it's kind of a ridiculous question to ask an entrepreneur, I understand, but do you think you're always going to be in healthcare?
No.
No. Okay.
Straight. No.
No.
I won't.
Okay.
Nurses remind me a lot of teachers.
Yeah.
Right? They are overworked, underpaid, underappreciated in market. That is what gravitated me to nurse practitioners. That notion of underappreciated, overworked, overlooked, that is what I gravitate towards. And I cannot tell you why that is. The joke I make is, I grew up a Mets fan and We all know how the Mets suck. And so, like, that's like, the underdogs.
That's a good line. I like that.
But like, I can't tell you exactly why I gravitate towards it, but that's what I do. And so, any opportunity where it exists, that scenario exists, where we're overlooking a population group, I think there's a lot of opportunity in business there to do good work, right? Because I'm not the type where I've never been obsessed about the money or the return on investment or the exit number. I've been obsessed of, is this work I'm doing, does it matter? Are we doing something that actually makes a difference?
Well, look, you and I kind of talked about this. It's like we have precious few years on this earth. We have even fewer precious few productive and healthy years. And
good point.
If you have the ability to really do something that means something to you, then grab it.
Agreed. And I think that hopefully everything we're doing at NPHub continues to go well. And then it gives me the opportunity to go do it again with less focus around the business model.
Yeah.
Right? Because when I started NPHub, if we didn't do well,
You're not eating.
I didn't eat. And I didn't come from a well-to-do family. It was literally my money or no money, if that makes sense. And so, in a 100%, if there's an opportunity to do this again down line, at the moment, and I will caveat, I'm 35 without kids right now.
Yeah.
I want to do it one more time.
I hear that.
One day.
Yeah. I think it's hard to... And you read about these people that are like, I just want to get to this number in like my mid 40s and then retire. I'm like, and do what?
I make that joke. Look, I'm guilty. I've been making that joke lately. I'm like, what are you going to do after NPHub? I said, I'm retiring. I'm done.
Did I just describe you?
You literally just did. And, and you know what's funny?
Right.
My wife literally rolled her eyes. The hardest eye roll I've ever seen whenever I say this statement, because she's like, okay, after a year, what are you going to do? Like I love the grind. I love the chaos.
Yeah,
I do. I might not openly admit it, but I love it.
I'm not saying like you work just because it's what you're supposed to do, right? But just to then, I don't know, like go play golf and have lunch and not use your mind. I don't know, dude.
No, I know. I mean, it's the same thing. Don't you hear? There's some stat. I'm probably butchering this one, but there's a stat out there where you are, what happens to people that end up retiring within a few years? It's like they deteriorate further.
Yes. Yeah. I don't know what the number is, but I know what you're talking about.
That happens, I think, at any point of view. Like if I take a break for 5 years, I do believe I will get worse.
Yeah.
Maybe it's, absurd, but that's what I think.
All right. So for those listening out there who either want to be part of the mission to save healthcare or want to learn more about your product and services, how do they find you?
Well, they go to nphub.com.
nphub.com.
Yeah.
And Krish, your first name starts with a K. Your last name starts with a C if you want to look him up online. Krish, thank you very much for coming here and sharing your story. Really appreciate it.
Thank you so much. It was so much fun.
Sure thing.